The more specific examples you can give your subconscious, it has a better idea of what you're going for. I think focusing on the things that you do want always enhances the possibility of you getting that. You've got to be focusing on the things you want instead of the things that are getting in your way.
I'm Amy Woodall, and this is The Conscious Habit, a show from the People Forward Network. We're teaching you how to incorporate love and consciousness at work, at home, and the world at large. You just heard from Judy Kane. She's an author, a mindset transformation specialist, and she's the founder of Aligned Consciousness. In short, Judy is my kind of people. And she helps people create subconscious beliefs that align with their conscious goals, because the fact is that these latent thoughts and feelings that we carry around affect our behavior in such a great degree, often more than we ever give it credit for. And I think the best part about Judy's process is that she creates space for people to alter these beliefs in under 5 minutes. In our conversation, we talk about the step-by-step technique and identifying and changing those subconscious thoughts. But first, because she is a consciousness specialist, you know exactly where we had to start off this conversation. Conscious Habit listeners, I have to tell you, I love the People Forward Network so much. They are a great resource for us here on the podcast. And our guest today, Miss Judy Kane, came to me because of the People Forward Network. They shared with me her information that they found on LinkedIn, and her company is called Aligned Consciousness. Judy and I met, and I was like, yes, the listeners have to hear from you. So please stay tuned today, listeners. Judy's expertise is helping people move beyond the blockages in their mind, the head trash. She is a change specialist. So if you are struggling with change or belief anywhere in your life, be sure that you save today's episode. Judy's going to have some great insight for us. Judy, welcome to the podcast.
I am so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, so glad for our listeners to learn from you. And I started following you on LinkedIn and just love the information that you share out in the world. Just so you all know, listeners, it's very intuitive. But there's one question I do ask every single time, which is, Judy, what is your definition of consciousness?
I look at it in 3 aspects, actually. What I do is try to help people align those 3 levels. You got the subconscious level, and the conscious level, which is your intention part, the things that you're meaning to have happen and what you're aware of and how you go forth basically with your intentions. And then there's that higher consciousness that we're all a part of. And so a lot of times those aren't all lined up to give us the most fulfilling life. Part of my mission is helping people get those all lined up so that life is easier, more fun.
I'm always curious about people's journeys. I love that definition, by the way. I love those 3 buckets. I think it's really helpful for all of us to reflect how much we know or understand about subconscious mind and higher intuition. Those 3 buckets, what a great reflection. What was your journey to this? Were you someone who always felt like you were sort of connected to all 3 of those, or curious? Was there a moment in time in your life where things changed for you? What did that look like in your journey?
I wasn't that aware of what the subconscious impact was until I saw somebody else using the process that I use now. And when I started studying that, learning it myself, it was a huge aha moment to see how much of an impact what's in your subconscious has on the way you move around and how you respond to things. I just had not been that tuned into that until I started seeing people use this modality.
What is it that stood out to you that you were like, there's something about this?
I was married at the time, and my husband had a lot of friends that did a lot of different types of energy work. And I wasn't that well exposed. You know, I'd seen acupuncture and assumed it worked because people have been using it for centuries. I didn't disbelieve, but I just didn't have much exposure to anything similar. And I would see his friends offering to do certain things that seemed nice, but they didn't seem to have huge impacts. But this one event, my husband had a significant pain somewhere, and a friend said, "Would you like some help with that?" And I was standing there and they didn't go hide somewhere. She just started doing what she did. And the pain was gone in 5 minutes. It didn't come back. And it was a very straightforward process where I could see I could do this because it didn't require interpreting messages or sensing energy. I was just stunned at how complete and fast the pain went away. Then you could see all the possible applications for other types of situations. We started having practice groups at our house for people, and they were mostly being used for belief things that were holding people back as opposed to physical symptoms. The potential is huge.
I love that it appealed to the left brain. Is that what you would say, Judy, as you were like, there's probably something to all of this. I don't know how to tap into that, but it appealed to the left side of the brain that was like, this is logical, practical, and there's a step-by-step process in order to achieve it.
Absolutely. I would never have gone for the first workshop if it hadn't been something that looked like I could actually learn and do.
And I love that there are modalities that serve all of that, because there are some people who are pulled more into the right. So for my fellow left brainers, you're going to love this episode. What is this very practical, highly effective method that you are referring to?
It's called Psych K. It starts out like the beginning of psychology, PSYCH-K. It's been around since the 80s. It's a fast change process. You can usually change any one single belief in less than 5 minutes.
Wow. Can you throw out an example? Can you give us a couple of categories that come to mind?
Sure. I work frequently with people who want their businesses to be better. I work with all sorts of things, phobias too. But the majority of people I work with, it's business related. And the majority of beliefs that we end up addressing fall into either things that cause fear or things that cause self-doubt. It's the safety aspects and the self-worth stuff that comes up the most. And the safety things, I say that and people immediately assume physical safety, but I'm talking about a fear of success or a fear of failure or a belief that there's a scarcity of resources that you need for some reason, time, money, clients, whatever is there that could be scarce and would impact you, that could fall into that category. There's so many fears out there that influence how you feel for sure, because they stress you out if you feel fearful, but they influence the decisions you make. It's how you perceive events as either opportunities or threats.
And I think with keeping this in mind that people are pinpointing that place, I guess my question for you is, do people come to you highly aware of exactly what the belief or the challenge is? Or is that something you help them uncover? Or does that come from a coach? What's the process in which that awareness is discovered?
I do work with coaches. I serve as a resource for them when they have a client that's stuck in the coaching program. And that is usually more apparent because they've already been discussing it with their coach that sent them. They've already gotten to some sort of conclusion of, well, it's generally in this area. We know we want to see this and it's not happening. So with them, it's usually more defined. For the people that come straight to me without being sent by a coach, it's a variety. Sometimes people know exactly what it is that's holding them back, and they understand the importance of subconscious beliefs because they do control about 95% of our behavior. And they're mostly there by the time we're 7. So you don't always know what's in there, but you can look at your life and give it a good guess. So sometimes they know, they're very aware of this. They're very clear about what they want to change. And other people, it's just they're scared about something or their goals aren't being hit and they don't really know why, but they're not happy with things the way they are. What would you rather be experiencing? Which is not an easy question for some people to answer. They know what they're trying to avoid, but they don't know what they want.
I think that's a moment of reflection right there. There's a lot of people right now who we often call it the messy middle, where they're like, I feel like I'm supposed to be somewhere else, whether it's a whole new career or it's a new position or just a new company. And they get into this middle place where they just don't know. They know that this is no longer what I want. They're fearful of taking that next leap or that next step. There's a lot of lack of clarity that can be there. I always think of my friend, I mentioned this on a podcast recently, my friend Des, when I was in the midst of unclarity, she said, "What are you pretending not to know?" And I was pissed because she was so right. But for people who do find them in that space, Judy, what recommendations do you have for them? Is it peeking into those three buckets of consciousness, subconscious, conscious? Where would you guide them for the people who are just in that state of confusion? Something's holding me back. I don't know what it is.
First, I'd ask them to get very clear on where they want to be going. What do they want to be experiencing or achieving? What's the emotion that having more money would give you? Or what's the benefit of that? Is it freedom? Is it legacy? Is it travel? What is that? But to get really clear on what they do want, as opposed to, I want to stop being so tired, avoiding things is not helping get there. So getting clear on what you do want and then getting very specific about how that's going to show up, what your life is going to look like once that's true. That can go a long ways towards changing things.
Can we break down the science of that? Why is that piece important for people to have that clarity of what it looks like? And I'm curious how much detail you encourage people to kind of lean into. Why is that so important in creating a new reality?
I wish I knew the science of it. My guess is that the more specific examples you can give your subconscious, it has a better idea of what you're going for. Also, if you start getting clear on what you want, you see more instances of where the possibilities are for that or where it exists already. But I think focusing on the things that you do want always enhances the possibility of you getting that. You got to be focusing on the things you want instead of the things that are getting in your way.
There's a couple things that come to mind of just the power of visualization, where they've been able to measure the brain patterns or brain waves of Olympic athletes, both when they are doing the thing, like they're running their little tails off and they're hurtling in the parts of the brain that are highlighted versus having them just imagine in detail running and doing the hurdles, how the exact same parts of the brain are highlighted. So it's almost like the most positive form of gaslighting. We are convincing ourselves that this reality is true because this little feeble brain of mine that I give a whole lot of power has no idea the difference between a made-up event and a real event. So I can convince it, if I want to, that this is real, even if it's just a future desired state. We have the capacity to do that if we just have somebody like you to ask us the right questions and help guide us down that path along the way too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been used for years with athletes, like you say, visualizing the shots or the golf strokes or whatever the things are that people want. In fact, I've helped people with athletic goals, and that is definitely not my area of expertise, but getting them to picture how it's going to look. And then if there are beliefs they are getting in the way, changing those to support them. It works in any context, but the visualization is a very important thing. And to the level where you're seeing how it looks, you're imagining how it sounds, how you feel. I think that's one of the biggest things. Getting into the situation in your imagination so well that you can tell how you feel.
Is the feeling part most closely tied, or is that the language of the subconscious mind? Why is the feeling part so important to bring as we marry the thought together?
I don't know, but I've got a theory why sometimes affirmations work for people and why sometimes they don't. You have to believe them. It's not just saying it and repeating it over and over. I think where they're successful for people, they have really gotten into the emotion of what the affirmation means. I know people who've repeated the same thing for years. They've been clients and they've come in and say, well, I know I believe this. And their subconscious does not. Consciously they do, but you can't tell what's in the subconscious based on what you consciously believe. There's not necessarily a correlation there.
I think that is very powerful for people who are like, I've been doing the things, right? I've been telling myself the right thing. I've been giving the affirmation. It may be that your subconscious mind believes something different. Subconscious mind is always going to trump the conscious mind until we can dig in to those pieces there. And the belief that has worked for me is I think of myself like a giant antenna. What channel am I tuning into right now, both emotionally and mentally? So if I am tuning into doom, gloom, and fear, and that is the information I'm casting out, I can see it and experience no other way. If I am tuning into opportunity, possibility, abundance, I can see it no other way. And so I think that's a really great reflection for people to have, that antenna, the signal.
Absolutely. I think that's critical. You're attracting what you're focusing on. And probably the feeling thing is connected with the vibration that you're putting out, which is why that would be more important than what you're actually seeing or hearing or smelling or tasting or any of the other senses. But that emotion is what your frequency is.
So the subconscious mind, what else do you feel like if you could just say, Amy, I wish everyone knew and understood X, Y, and Z about the subconscious mind? What are some of those insights to share?
What I mentioned earlier is we get most of them by the time we're 7. And we're just little sponges before that, running around, just absorbing the rules of engagement wherever we land. And it's nature's way of making sure we've got the best shot of surviving. We land where we land so that we can get those beliefs that are going to help support us in that group the best way. So you get them there. They may be helping you. They may not. There are a lot of things we learn as children that are very helpful for our survival. And there are other things that kids pick up that may or may not be helping them then, and they are more likely to not help you when you're an adult. If it's things like the world is unsafe, or I don't deserve to be treated well, mistrusting everybody's intentions, or money is this root of all evil. There are so many things with money that are conflicting messages that people have. You don't want more than you need, or you don't want so much because you don't like the way those people act and they've got money, or you don't want to be greedy. And yet it's how we're measured mostly about success. And so it's a real conflict that gets set up in the brains of little children. It's really the way we perceive everything in the world. It's based on those beliefs we get. It's how we interpret events. It's how we interpret people's motives. It's how we choose which people to be with and what to try to do and what to not try to do because we don't think it's safe or don't trust ourselves to do it. There are all sorts of things there that are influencing our day-to-day life. It's our default system. It's not because you just aren't trying hard enough or you haven't learned enough or you're just a bad person and don't deserve to have that good thing happen for you. Knowing that these are just beliefs that are there is really important because then you can start taking a look at how accurate some of these things are. And even more important is to know that they can be changed.
First off, I think when anyone wins the lottery, Judy should just be like assigned to lottery winners because what's the stat? Within 3 years, they're broke, if not more broke than they were when they started. And it's because subconscious mind running the show. You can't out-earn your negative thinking. What are some signs if I'm like, how do I know what I'm experiencing? And patterns are powerful. We often are blind to them. We just think, oh, it's so interesting that I only ever have the bad boyfriends. Is that coincidence? They're just finding you? Or I always have bosses who just take advantage of my hard work. Or I have a friend who I mentioned earlier, Des. I'll never forget when she shared a client that had said, I always end up working around incompetent and stupid people. So how do we know, Judy, if our subconscious is sabotaging, if it's getting in the way of us living a life that's better than the one we're currently living?
So look for the patterns. You were mentioning that. If the relationships are always this way, there's a reason for that. And it's the common denominator, which would be you. If you were consistently stressed out thinking about doing certain things or being with certain people, that's a pattern. And if it doesn't make sense, if it's not something that everybody thinks would be a really horrible thing to be doing, then you got to look at what's going on with you. You've probably got beliefs there that stress you out because you don't know how to handle it. It might seem unsafe or you don't think you deserve it. Some combination of beliefs there cause the anxiety, the stress about it, or self-sabotage. If you are constantly getting in your own way, procrastination, or never getting a complete message out there, you always leave the date off if you're sending out a notice about a meeting or a presentation or something. If those are patterns, you've probably got some subconscious beliefs in there that are getting in your way.
I'm curious if you can help decipher this. How do we know the difference, or even when you're working with a client to make a distinction between what is a personality or behavior trait versus what is a subconscious block?
Don't distinguish between that, but generally speaking, we aren't trying to change things that they are okay with. We're never trying to change things they're okay with on a conscious level. When they're with me, they come because they want to change something. It's not working for them. And so it's beliefs that might be causing the behavior, or it's beliefs causing the emotion, which can then cause the behavior. I've never thought about the distinction between the behavior and the personality and the subconscious beliefs. But when people come, I don't encourage people to think, well, this is just the way I am.
Folks listening, I wanted to mention that because if you're like, my DISC says, or my PI says, whatever assessment says, I think there are great levels of awareness, and every behavior that we have can serve us really well. And then there's times it becomes a hindrance. So if you speak the language of DISC, don't get too hung up on it. But there's a certain personality style that is very skeptical of other people, skeptical of new ideas. It's a matter of protection. And there probably are ways and times in which that helps them, because maybe they actually are like really take things slowly and they look at things curiously, but it could be creating a big division in relationships. And what I'm hearing you talk about with your work, Judy, is you're like, the parts that's working for you, that can stay. The parts that's creating division in the areas of your life that you wish to have breakthroughs in, that's the stuff we're going to work on so that it becomes a positive trait, not a hindrance to your growth or ideal life.
Absolutely. I don't ever tell people what they need to be believing or how they need to be behaving. That's not my role when I work with people. They come in and say what they want, and we figure out what beliefs they need to support the thing that they want. But it's their choices and their words, and it's all of what they are trying to rewrite. It's like writing code for a computer. This code isn't doing what I want it to do. It's not giving the outcome that I want. And you change it so that you get the outcome that you want.
And Judy mentioned when we were together that you work with a lot of coaches, and it's probably because coaches can help create the awareness of what's happening. And awareness is a gift in so many ways, but it can sometimes feel like a curse if we're like, I constantly can see it. The light is on, but I don't know how to shut the damn thing off. Tell me what to do. I can see it, but I feel so frustrated with myself. And then people begin to go down the spiral of, I'm just weak. I need to be more disciplined. But they don't recognize that it's beyond their own conscious thinking. I'm curious, you mentioned that my coaches send me their people and you work together one time or maybe a few times. But Judy, how would you explain it? We heal it, we rewire it, we change it.
Transform, rewire, rewrite. Sometimes I tell people we take out the head trash, but it's not fixing something, because it just is what it is. But if you want it to be different, then it needs to change.
So your process is really, how do we transform this so that it becomes a non-event? So for example, if you are working with somebody who you find has a real mental block around money, which is hindering their success, or maybe they've had a chance to make really good money, but they do a really good job of spending all the money too. They're just not even thinking about money. Now it's this ease. It's not something that they're obsessing over. Like, what's the outcome on the other side?
So it depends on what we start working with. If they have an emotion about a situation, some people feel a little panicky every time they think about having to sit down and take care of their bills. Or if an expense comes up and they get this pit in the stomach reaction to the idea that they're going to have to deal with the money and spend it. We work with the emotion first and just transform that to peace and non-attachment, basically. The uncomfortable emotion, it could be fear, it could be guilt, it could be anger, it could be all sorts of things. But if there's an emotion associated with it, there's a whole bucket of beliefs that are causing that emotion. So you can get more bang for the buck if you just take care of the whole bucket with one change, which is just transforming that emotion to not be an uncomfortable one, a stressful one. We frequently will follow that up with some targeted statements. Then you pick the statements that you want to be true, and they're affirmation style statements. When you're talking about money, if there's that fear associated with it, take care of that first. But then it might be that they don't think it's okay to have more money than they need. So a statement about that we can install, if you will, into the subconscious. There are all sorts of things connected with money that might be applicable. I've seen a lot of people whose career was at a plateau because they had a subconscious belief that to be successful, they had to work 24/7. And their subconscious was protecting their work-life balance by not letting their business get too successful, because then it would have required more hours and more time and more effort. Changing the belief that you can have a successful business and work-life balance took away that barrier.
We talk about this all the time, but I love that you have a process for it, is helping people see the also and, not the either or. What I'm hearing you share is the subconscious mind can often have these rules that we play by that we don't even know are set up, or these guardrails that have been created for us on an emotional and mental level. So we feel trapped in the confines of these rules of play that we don't realize. And so we play an either or. Either I can be really successful, or I can spend time with my family. Either I can have flexibility and freedom, or I can grow the business. And that, I'm sure, creates a ton of barriers. So I love that you have the process for people to live and break down so they can be in the also and.
Because that's what's stressing people out. They consciously want a better business. They're doing all the right things. They don't think they're doing the right things because it's not working.
We talk about habits. So I talk about how do we build this awareness and what is our habit of consciousness. But so many people just believe that I just have to create new habits. I just need new action. And if we break down the self-fulfilling prophecy wheel of beliefs, judgments, actions, results, there is some proof that changing action creates new results, which can rewire the thinking. But it sounds like what you're doing is a faster approach. And can you share like either the difference or why going straight there is faster than the action itself? Can you break that down a little bit?
If it's a habit, you're going to keep doing the action. But if you can change the subconscious belief so that it's just a normal thing to be doing, it usually takes less than 5 minutes to change any one belief. It's actually putting it into the subconscious so that it is the default for what you do. When you're building a habit, it takes a lot of time for that to be the default because of the repetition over time and building the new pathways with the neurons and that type of thing. The brain waves change when you've changed these beliefs. They've had scans that look at the brain before and after a belief change, and there's the difference with the scans. It's a shortcut to getting that type of support that you want for whatever the goal is you're trying for.
And I would imagine it's also like you move past your own resistance, because when you are in the action, there's always that part of you that tries to talk you out of the thing. We could just use exercise, for example. If somebody has belief systems about their health or what they think that they deserve from a health perspective, and they're like, I just need to show up at the gym. Do you know how many times you pull into that parking lot and your instant belief is like, maybe I should just go home and have some soup? And then we have to fight against that urge. It's almost like the harder road. There's more grit and grind, and it takes longer because it's a lot of unlearning. It's like you got to build and quiet the old stuff and then slowly build brick by brick the new belief systems. And you're saying it don't have to be that hard. So, Judy, first off, I love that you are doing this in the world. I love that there is a fast track for us, whether we recognize or not. But let's say I recognize there's a hurdle and I'm just really frustrated with myself and I feel weak that I can't overcome it. You have a fast track for people to get to where they want to go. Is there any other advice that you would like to share with our listeners when it comes to just not letting those self-limiting beliefs or that head trash drive them, or paying attention to that subconscious mind? Any last few suggestions you'd like to share?
I'm just going to repeat mostly what I've said before because it's important. Look for the patterns in your life that are not serving you well. Be clear on what you want in certain situations or aspects of your life. Get really detailed about how those situations or relationships look, sound, feel. Immerse yourself emotionally into the experience of being in that outcome. And those make a huge difference. And if there is still work to be done. There are lots of people like me out here who can help. Subconscious beliefs can be changed. There are lots of different modalities. There are lots of people who do each of those modalities. Find something that works for you and don't just give up and think it's just the way you need to be.
I love that. There's no need to suffer. Help is on the way, dear. So listeners, I encourage you to find Judy. Judy, we're going to have you plug the best way for our listeners to find you if they want to hire you, if they want to know more about what you do. I happen to jump on to Judy's site, which we will have linked in the show notes, which is alignedconsciousness.com. And I downloaded her free guide. It's 7 signs your subconscious is running the show. There's a lot more free resources where that came from. So check out Judy's website. And Judy, how else can our listeners find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I love doing podcasts like this. So one whole page of my website is links to shows that I've been on. And I've written a book. So that's available as well. All of these people can find on the website. And I'm always available. I have 15-minute phone calls to answer more questions. People always have questions about how this works or would it work for them. So phone calls are available for booking in addition to sessions if people have questions.
Fantastic. I have taken all kinds of notes today, and I know our listeners have too. Judy, thank you so much for sharing your genius here on the podcast.
Thank you. I've enjoyed this.
Before we wrap up this episode, here are my 3 takeaways from Judy and how we can incorporate them into our lives. Number 1, our subconscious is our default. Think about each one of us as these computers with this hardwiring like we spoke about. And this hardwiring is just there based on what we've known to be true. It's generational, it's, our own protection. And the more curious we can be about the hardwiring, the more we can do these software updates with new practices, new belief systems, new levels of awareness and curiosity. When we broaden our conscious mind, we're able to bring more curiosity to the subconscious, which can begin to rewire the default. Number 2, look for patterns in your work, in your life, in your relationships. How you do anything is how you do everything. If we are curious about what is my hardwiring, what is my default, what is happening in my subconscious mind, just look at our outcomes in those various relationships in life. We are all just a sequence of patterns, not to whittle us down, and say that we aren't more complicated than that, but we really do have these patterns of our belief systems that manifest themselves in the outcomes around us, again, at work and life and in relationships. And if we just look at those and say, how is that going? Is there an undertone in all of this? Is there an undertone of I attract people who don't believe in me? That is a powerful reflection on our deep belief system that may be creating that reality. Is there a pattern in my work life and relationships where things get good and then all of a sudden just the crap hits the fan and everything goes terrible? Ooh, interesting. Could there be some self-sabotaging that I'm doing on an unconscious or subconscious level? I think when we just bring that curiosity to look at our patterns, we get really solid answers. Number 3, beliefs not only impact your reality, but they create your reality. Say it with me. Your eyes see what your brain believes. This is my mantra. I say it all the time. We could turn it into a drinking game. That's how often I say it. Because the truth is, your brain works really hard to prove to you that what you believe to be true is true in the world. It even allows us to really shift our perspective and what we're willing and able to see based on what we believe to be true. So if I think life sucks and life is hard, then my eyes say, okay, I'm going to work overtime to show you and highlight to you all of the examples that life sucks and life is hard. If I think people suck, my brain and my eyes going to work overtime to show me all of the examples where humanity is not good. But if I say life is easy, life is good, then I begin to tell my brain what is important and it informs my eyes to show me those scenarios in the world. All of this, all of our entire episode that I appreciate so much about Judy really could be whittled down to those facts that the unconscious mind, the subconscious mind, it's running the show, but it doesn't have to. If we invite the conscious mind to join, we bring in curiosity and we realize that we can hack our mind, we can then hack our lives. Thanks for listening to the Conscious Habit Podcast. If you dug this episode, we'd love it if you would subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And if you're into this consciousness thing, if you like this conversation and you want to meet more like-minded people, head on over to Facebook and join the Conscious Habit community. Until next time, do the world a favor and go love yourself.